day, fellow people.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. You guys get pounded with snow too, or what?
Oh yeah.
You guys were getting like 40 centimeters in some spots, were you?
I don't think we got that much, but with the snow plows that have been pushing up against the end of our driveway, it's probably about thigh high. So
I believe it is. We got, I don't know actually how much, but my kids do snow removal. They're 15 and 17, and
Okay,
so
yeah.
they like. Well, anyways, they do a bunch of kind of cool stuff together as a little mini company, but the storm was being forecast, and we were getting calls. My wife was getting messages from people being like, "Hey, are your boys going to be around on Thursday? Because we're going to need their help." And so a company reached out and was like, "I need extra guys. Would they mind helping me?" So we were like, "Sure." So we were up at 4:30 this morning.
Oh my gosh!
Dropped them off at some contractor dude's house, and they like hopped in his truck, and they're like, "All right, go." They're still out now.
I've been avoiding outside like the plague. So.
Yeah.
Hi, Diane. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good. Long time no see.
Yeah.
You guys weren't in this swath, but you guys get your own amounts of snow, Diane.
Yeah, we're not getting much snow right now, but we are getting cold, like
Yeah.
minus 30, minus 40.
Yeah, no, it's not that bad here. It's been like -5.
Oh,
Madison,
yeah.
these are Canadian temperatures. I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yeah,
You know
super familiar. Actually, my husband's from South Africa and he uses Celsius, so I'm like kind of familiar with it, semi.
I work almost exclusively with Americans, so I have a cheat sheet on the side of my desk because people talk about it, and I'm like, I'm at the point now where I've been doing it long enough. I kind of get it, the amounts. But
I can never remember the calculation.
I know that anything below 0 is super cold.
Yeah, after that, it's just
cold.
I won't use the words, but it's just cold.
Yeah.
How are you guys?
Excellent.
Really good.
Oh, wow.
Good. Malcolm, I feel like I haven't seen you in a while.
No,
I went from seeing you like once a week, and then I haven't seen you in a while.
I know I've had conflict after conflict for the planning meetings. I feel bad, but
me too.
All good.
I know there's lots of powerful voices there, so they're surely moving things forward.
Exactly.
We'll give people some time. I'm surprised that we're down to this. Oh, we just lost Imran.
We have Robert's note taker.
Yeah, Robert should be here any minute.
And
everybody might be in their driveway.
Whenever you guys are ready, I can present the Doug intro slides as well.
Okay.
Unless you wanted to present them, but
I did add them to ours just so we didn't have to switch. If that works for you, Madison, I can just
perfect. Works for me.
I can just keep clicking through.
Diane, do you know if that has the promo code at the end of it? Like, is it pretty updated? Okay.
It does.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, those are super updated. I just added Southeast Regional.
Yeah. So. I just grabbed that one from the link you sent us.
Awesome. So. Very
How did the Doug call? It was earlier today, right? You guys.
Yeah, it was really good. We essentially just went over how leaders can create their own graphics on Canva. So I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Savannah Dill. Have you heard of her before? Yeah. She makes these amazing graphics. So she kind of taught everybody how to do it on their own. Because I think somebody had suggested it, or a few people were interested in it last meeting. So that was pretty much all. There wasn't too many big Doug updates.
Awesome.
I'll send out the recording as well later. Still not downloading.
Lots of good momentum, I saw, because the agenda was posted and lots of people and announcements of who was picked for speaking and whatnot.
Yes, very exciting. It'll be fun. I didn't join Doug until August of last year, so this will be my first DynamicsCon, so I'm super excited. Everybody said great things about it, so very excited.
Awesome.
It's going to be a little less exciting because Matt's not coming, as it turns out. But
I was just going to ask that.
I'm
Who's doing
sorry.
Oh, Matt, you're missing it?
I am, unfortunately. I've had something come up around the same time, so
I
That's
understand.
these choices we
That's-
got to make sometimes.
Yeah, man, there's so many of them. But you're going to the Canadian. You're going to the one out west, right?
Yeah, the platform summit. Yeah, I'll be out in Vancouver next month.
Nice.
Oh,
Very cool.
nice.
Yeah, that one's gonna be fun.
Are you, Diane? Are you going to go to that one?
No.
No, me neither.
Where is it in Vancouver?
Yeah.
Oh, that'll be nice.
I think I did send the link to some in our organization, so hopefully they'll join.
Fingers crossed.
I'm
See a
really
few people
trying.
trickling in.
Ryan.
Mr. Monk.
I'm really trying to root for a Vancouver regional next year so that I can go to Vancouver because I've never been.
It's probably one of my favorite Canadian cities.
It's beautiful there from
It is
everything that I've
gorgeous.
seen.
Yeah.
So
It's just a cool
selfishly, I'll
vibe. It's a nice city.
be rooting for Vancouver.
Any excuse to get out there, I'll take it.
Right?
100%, I agree.
Depends on
Yeah,
what
I
time
agree.
of the year you come. So make sure you come around summertime.
All right, noted.
Although I would take whatever you're getting out there today, I would take over what we have here today. So
Oh, it's beautiful,
What's your-
sunny but cold. -2.
what's cold though?
Yeah.
It's funny.
How
I went
cold?
out there last year in
-2.
January.
It's like
Yeah, I went out there
t-shirt.
last year in January, and it was the coldest that it had ever been there. I think it got down to -16. And it's not. Vancouver's not built for that.
No, it's not.
We got you all beat. It was -49 here with the wind chill this morning.
I believe
Yes.
it. Yeah.
Are you
Wow.
Edmonton or Winnipeg?
Diane knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, exactly. I have the same thing right now, Ryan.
That's Regina, right?
And you're in Lloyd.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is
Madison,
cold.
once it gets past
That's
-32, it's the same.
Yeah. It's,
I
I
think-
guess in
it's-
Celsius, I think it would be like 10 degrees here or like 15 degrees. So it's a lot warmer than you guys, but still not warm.
Fair enough.
Mhm.
Smaller crowd today. I'm surprised, but also not really, because it's kind of that time of year where people are hunkering down and heads down. What do you do? Diane, you have the slides pulled up. Thank you for pulling them up. I had just pulled them up right before I jumped in, so I'm glad that you got there.
Good stuff.
Anybody using, so we usually just do normal like networking stuff, and I wanted to ask what we were talking about. Has anybody been playing around with Copilot Studio or agents or any of that kind of stuff lately? Has anybody been playing with it at all?
You've had a
Have
use
you,
case for
Malcolm?
I did. I have a little bit dabbled, but I was just playing. What was that other comment? I missed it.
I'd say we've just got a use case where one of our lines of business is looking at using AI Builder for invoice processing. So we're finally
that's
getting into
super
that.
cool.
Yeah.
That's a super cool one. Yeah, so I'll talk through the use case that we just had, and it's top of mind because I literally was just working on it before jumping in here. So we have a customer who wants to upload all resumes that they have and all white papers and documentation from different projects, and their responses to things that ultimately get graded. And so we've got the beginning stages of an agent, I guess we'll call it a Copilot Studio agent, where we've got it looking at the library where all these exist, and you can actually ask the library or ask Copilot, hey, I need somebody who's got experience with these tools and to draw from. So we've got hundreds of resumes in there and everybody's got different experience. And Copilot like immediately comes back with like, here, call these 3 people. They have the skills you're looking for.
Super
Like, out of
cool.
all the
That's
resumes,
really
it just
neat.
grabs the ones that it needs.
That's
Yeah,
so cool.
super cool. So it gets even more detailed than that because they want it to actually rate based on responses and what was the response rate to their response, if that makes sense. Like, was it a positive response or a negative response? So then it's also going to take it a step further and not just identify the people, but also then say, and here were your top, 5 results from the last year that were rated the highest. So you can use them as a starting point for your new response to the new request. So that probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but all that to say, it's freaking cool to see it unfold the way it's unfolding. Like, just to have it comb through resumes and be like, in a fraction of a second, here's the people you should hone in on because they have the skills that you're looking for. Like, that's the coolest thing.
That's wild.
Awesome. Yeah. I use Copilot not even for, this has nothing to do with business really, but it makes my grocery list every single week. I type into Copilot, I say, make me a meal plan for the week that includes, healthy foods, focuses on whatever, and it'll come up with an entire grocery list. You can say, I want it under $100 or whatever, and it makes you the recipes, tells you what grocery store you should go to. I mean, it is the coolest thing ever.
Under $100 must be like Mr. Noodles and tap water. That's about all.
No. They just send you to Aldi. It is really neat, though.
That is cool. Yeah, seeing people doing that. We used it. My wife she's a big fitness person, and she was doing all of our macros stuff. She's on this whole thing, this cut or whatever, and so we put in the macros values and be like, I need this much protein, this much. Give me a meal plan, like a 7-day meal plan that's going to hit these every day, giving me these macros. And it was pretty close. It didn't do it perfectly. There was some weird stuff in there, but it was pretty close. And it was like decent. We told it to make sure it had good variety. We didn't want to eat the same thing every day, but try to minimize food waste, because we didn't want to buy one bag of things and use 2 of them and then throw everything else out. So it did a pretty good job. I was impressed. It needed a little bit of work, but it's pretty cool. All right.
Ryan,
your project sounds interesting, Malcolm, because we have something similar. Like we do consultation reports here for our members that we go and visit, and right now we're manually searching. Like, okay, we search for funding through all of them. I wonder if Copilot could make that simpler.
I'm sure it could.
Yeah. Oh, I'm interested in that.
One of the next things we're going to do with it is, right now it's just pulling from the content of the document. So
yeah,
like if you put stuff in a SharePoint library and once it's indexed and everything, you can search any words either from the metadata involved or within the document. Yeah. That's cool.
Okay.
But like the rating stuff, we're going to embed that as metadata against it, so that once they get the result back, they can go back, find that file and update that metadata, because then they can search specifically on that or sort and filter and all that stuff. So there's a whole bunch more, but yeah, it was like a breakthrough today, because we were like, we don't even know if we can get it to do what we want it to do.
Yeah.
So it started giving us, it's like, yeah, you should call Sally Peters. And I was like, that's the person that I put in with the right resume. I know that's the right person. I'm like, what is happening? That was pretty exciting.
Neat.
So cool.
All right, well, we got a handful here. Madison, maybe you want to take on the Doug, or actually, yeah, Diane, you've got these slides set up. So these are our, I like this. Diane did these up. I like your bottom 2. Those are great. They could be you. Yeah, so next month we have the session. I know the session is going to be on what's the new customer thing called? I can't even remember the name of it. Contact center. And yeah, so she's doing a presentation on contact center and just kind of what it is, and trying to get people to remember the name of it, for example, so that'll help me. And so that's going to be a good one, because I know I was actually in a session with Nancy at a conference in the fall, and we sat in on kind of some of the new and upcoming features in there, and it was really cool. And then Nancy did a similar presentation at the regional event in Toronto. So she's going to do that, but that tool is evolving so fast that I'm confident she's going to have new stuff in there. So excited to see that. And then in April, as you can see, we got Ashley and Sebastian coming to talk about project operations. And my personal name for that session is It's Not a Myth, because I feel like that's a tool that everybody hears about, but nobody actually believes it actually exists. And so they're going to actually show you that it does exist. It actually does some really cool stuff. and talk through some of the benefits and pitfalls and challenges that people encounter as they go to use that tool, because there's a lot of, kind of like a field service project, there's a lot of underlying stuff you got to take care of in order to get it to work properly. So that's, to me, that's both those are don't miss sessions, because they're going to cover good information. And May 8th and June 12th, you shouldn't miss those either, but I can't tell you why, because we don't actually have speakers yet. But if you want to speak at them, as you can see, it could be you. So if you have content ideas, or even just things you would like to see somebody else present about, we'd love to hear them, because we can kind of comb the networks and lean on people like Madison to help us find potential speakers if we have topic ideas. We've got a couple of floaters out there that are feelers rather out there that are asking people if they want to speak. But if you have ideas, we would welcome them here. Diane, anything to add to any of that?
Nothing to those, just again, even if you don't want to be the speaker, share with us the things you want to hear about, and we can try to source that. For sure.
Some links to some of the other meetups and things that are going on. These are just random links, so the ones at the top are actual meetups. I presume that those are in the Doug channel if they're meetups.
Yes.
Yeah, so you can leverage those, and then there's other communities floating out there too. So we like to highlight them all. So if you're interested in that, I don't know if any of those are clickable, but we can definitely get you the list of them if you're interested, or you can just do a quick search, because most of them are public-facing communities that you can find out there. And if you have ideas, we do monitor this. We get updates when people submit. We don't get a lot of submissions to it, but again, if you have ideas, or if you think of an idea later, load this page now and then fill that form in later. Of course, you can just reach out via email to Rick, Diane, or I, and we'd be happy to chat through and kind of coordinate what you want to talk about. And then we'll hand it over to Madison to do the Doug content.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Well, my name is Madison Zulowitz. For those of you that don't know me, I am the event coordinator here with Doug, or Dynamics User Group. So I help coordinate our local meetup groups like this one and our regional meetups. So we can go ahead and go to the next page, Diane. I'm just going to give a quick introduction as to who Doug is and what all we offer. We are essentially a free community for users, implementers, and resellers of Microsoft business applications. We support and focus on Dynamics 365, GP, and Power Platform, and we hope to help people grow and excel in their personal and professional careers. So our rules of engagement is essentially we ask that these meetups are kept to be solely educational meetups, obviously unless we have a sponsor, but we want people to be able to come to these meetups and gain lots of educational content and network, but not be told a sales pitch while they're here. So we are here for education sessions. We offer multiple different programs. So we have online discussion forums, we have webinars, conferences, local meetups like this one. We also have a YouTube channel where all of our local meetups that are virtual get posted. So there's lots of great content out there. I'm sure that if you were interested about a topic, there's probably already a meetup on it. Or you can reach out to your lovely leaders, Malcolm and Diane, and they will help find a speaker for, for one of your meetups here. So I'd highly encourage checking out our website. So we also have our 2025 regional meetups. These are a little bit larger in size than local meetups. They're always in person, and it is a full day of content. Doug will provide breakfast, coffee, and lunch, and there will be lots of networking opportunities, usually a social hour at the end of the day. So we are going to Philadelphia in March 12th. We are going to Canada, June 16th and 17th. We'll be in Toronto and focusing on F&O, CE, BC, and Power Platform. We're going to West Africa and East Africa. So Kenya and Ghana in July. Yes, we're very excited about it. And then we are going to Colorado for our Rocky Mountain Regional. We're going to Ohio for our Ohio Valley in August, and hopefully we're going to Europe in September, Texas on September 17th, and we're going back to Southeast in Tampa on January 14th of 2026. So lots of fun and exciting things. If you were in any of these local areas, we highly suggest that you come on out. It's a great day of education. So Diane, would you mind going back one slide?
Sorry.
No worries. This is the biggest slide, I would say, that we have to offer today. We have our 2025 DynamicsCon coming up May 13th to the 16th. This is a multi-day conference. This will be lots and lots of education, lots of networking. Super fun for those who have attended. I've heard great things. And currently we are running an offer for all of our Meetup members where you can get a free DynamicsCon ticket. So this will only last until February 28th, but if you were interested in attending, please use your free ticket. This will only last for a short period of time. So even if you were remotely interested, I would highly suggest getting a ticket. And that is all for me. I'll pass it back over to Diane. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, Madison. Okay, so I think we will hop right into it. Welcome, Matt. Heard really great things about this session and your presentations in the past. So I will throw it on over to you to take over with the rest of the meeting.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, and hello, everyone. Let me get myself set up here. Should be sharing. And if everyone can see, we'll get going. So my name is Matt LaCasse, and this is Solutions and Other Problems. Now, it's a bit of a cheeky title, I know. I was chatting with another presenter at one point about possible titles for this one. We thought it was funny, so so I stuck with that. So today we're going to dive into the world of solutions, and when we're done here, you should have a greater understanding of how solutions work and some tips and tricks for helping to make your deployments run more smoothly. So without any further ado, let's dive right in. So why talk about solutions? Why go back to basics a little bit with everything else that's going on in Power Platform right now? Well, solutions are at the heart of the application lifecycle management in Power Platform. Now, chances are that your application is going to have at least 2 environments. I know that there's some that exist solely in a default environment. But most projects that I've worked on have had a minimum of about 4, and then I've seen up to 11 environments in some extreme cases. So you got somewhere to develop, somewhere to test, and then a prod instance ultimately where your users are going to use that application. And understanding how solutions work from when you're creating them and configuring them, adding components, and how the platform interprets and consumes them is key to building a successful application lifecycle strategy. So what are we going to talk about today? First, we're going to define what a solution is. Then we're going to define what a publisher is and how it relates to a solution. We're going to dive deep into unmanaged solutions, managed solutions, and what I call the solution framework, or how solutions interact with a Power Platform environment. At various points through the presentation, we'll go over different options when creating solutions and when adding components. We're going to talk a bit about source control, and I've actually, in the previous version of this, if you saw this in Toronto, there was a section on the solution packager tool. I've updated this to include some content on the new connect to Git functionality within Power Platform, so we're going to go over a little bit of that. We're going to talk about solution segmentation, or being purposeful in where you're putting components in which solutions for your apps. And then last, talk about a few of the options for deploying solutions. So what is a solution? And so I'll preface this by saying that this was designed kind of for a no experience necessary attendee to kind of build up a foundation of what solutions are. So I'm going to start kind of at the bottom, then we're going to work our way up. So a solution you can think of in kind of 2 ways. First is within a Power Platform environment, a solution is a container to hold your application and your app's components. So if all you ever did was work in one environment, the solution would just be that. It's a logical container. It's a place to store your stuff. The second and more important functionality is that solutions are the vehicle to transport your applications and their components from one environment to another. So once a solution leaves the environment, it goes from being a logical container to a physical zip file. Now, if you were to download and unzip the zip file, you would see a few different things. So on screen, what we got is you can see that there's a solution.xml, a customizations.xml, and a couple other files there. Your solution.xml is going to contain information about the solution itself, such as the name and the version. And then the lion's share of your customizations are going to be in this customization.xml. So all your tables, all your attributes, everything from your solution, all those things from your solution exist in that file. Along with these files, your solution is going to contain any web resources that you have, so your HTML, JavaScript, or CSS files, any SSRS reports that your application may consume, and then any plugin binaries as well. So that is solutions in a nutshell. So what goes into a solution? Well, with few exceptions, pretty much any component that you can create within the Maker portal can be added to a solution. If you look at the options when adding new or existing components, there's I didn't want to count them all, but there's dozens upon dozens of different of components that can be added into a solution. I think at this point it's probably better to highlight one of the things that you can't include into your solution, and that would be your data. So most applications that I've worked on have had some manner of reference data. And when I'm talking about reference data, I'm talking about things like tables containing cities or provinces and states. And in some of those implementations, application components have a dependency on that data. So an example would be if you had a workflow that looked for a specific record in a table in your conditional logic, that piece of data then becomes part of your solution, and it doesn't become part of the actual solution, but you need to move it through the environments for your solution to work properly. Unfortunately, managing data does fall outside of the scope of this, but there are a few tools available to help manage data. I use the data transporter tool very frequently, that's an XRM toolbox to move data from one environment to another. But there's also things like Kingsway Soft and custom scripting that's available to to be able to maintain consistent data between your environments. So to summarize, most any configuration created in the Maker portal can be added to a solution and transported between environments. So now that we've kind of talked about solutions, let's move on to publishers. So first, a publisher is used to identify the author or the creator of a component. So when you create a component within the context of a solution, that component is tied to the publisher. The second function of a publisher is that it introduces a level of ownership over the components. So I'm just planting a seed now. We're going to come back to this ownership piece when we get into the solution segmentation part of the presentation. So when you're creating a publisher, there's a few properties that you have to fill out before you can create it. You've got your display name, which is your user-friendly name. The name field is the system name. So this is the name by which Power Platform will reference this publisher. Description is pretty self-evident. Your prefix field, so I've usually seen it's usually a set of 3 or 4 characters, and this gets added to the beginning of the logical names of components within that solution. So it provides an easy way to identify the owner of certain components when you're looking outside of a solution. So for example, if you're looking at the tables area in the Maker portal, you're looking at you'll see all the logical names of those tables, and you'll be able to identify very quickly what belongs to who. And then the choice value prefix is used as the default first digits of all of your choice values when you're defining a new choice or option set, if you're old like me, and that's what you used to call it. So that is publishers in a nutshell. Do I have any questions before I move on? Okay, let's keep going. So the process of creating a solution is pretty straightforward. In the Maker portal on the left-hand side, you're going to have an option called Solutions. If you click inside there, there's going to, in the top ribbon, going to be a button that says New. And then when you click on New, you're going to be presented with the options that you see on screen here. So again, you have your display name and your system name. You recall that your system name is the name by which Power Platform references this, and this is going to be an important name if you're ever setting up things like Azure DevOps pipelines, or if you're using the command line interface, that is the name by which your solution will be referenced. The publisher we've covered, it is a required field, so you have to specify one of those. Version numbers have to be in the major.minor.patch.build format, so in this case, it always starts off at 1000. Configuration page is an optional piece of configuration for a solution, and it allows you to provide instructions for people installing the solution. Say, for example, you had connection references within your solution, and those references needed specific permissions on a table. You could put something like that into a configuration page for the people that are installing that solution. Again, we have a description, and that is about it. Once you hit create at the bottom, you will have your solution. So in order to add components to a solution, once it's been created and you navigate into the solution, you're going to have a button at the top that says new in the ribbon. If you click on that, you're going to have a drop-down list come up with the most common components listed. If the component that you want to create is not listed there, you can hover over more and you're going to get a secondary list with even more components. And then if the component that you still want to create still isn't there, if you hover over other, that's when this giant other the tertiary list comes up. And it takes a while to scroll through to find the components, but everything else that you can add will be there. When adding tables to a solution, it's important to note that there are two properties of a table that are automatically set to yes, and that is the include table metadata option and the include all options option. We are going to define these shortly, so if you're not familiar with what those are, that's okay. We are going to jump into that. The process for adding existing components, very similar. It's a similar kind of drop-down. So you've got your add existing button at the top, and then you have your 3 different lists for the component that you want to add. You search for it, hit OK, and then that gets brought into your solution. When you're adding existing tables, and again, you're going to be presented with these 2 options, include table metadata and include all objects. So what do those mean? Including table metadata, so it helps define what table metadata is. Table metadata is the configuration of that table that defines how the table behaves in the system. So when you're defining a table, you're going to have this window here, or something similar to that, and it contains things like whether or not your auditing is turned on, duplicate detection rules, whether or not the table shows up in search, and so on and so forth. So we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves again, but another seed being planted that there are implications for solution segmentation by having this enabled in multiple solutions for the same table. Generally speaking, there should only be one solution in an environment that has the table metadata, or else you could potentially run into issues where you're not seeing the behavior that you want because another solution is overriding that. And if that doesn't make sense, again, don't worry, we're going to jump into some great visuals about the solution layers and how all that works together. So the second option when adding a table to a solution is the include all objects option. The way that this works is if this is selected, if you were to add another component to a table, so for example, if you were to add a new form or a view, and you added that outside of the context of the solution. And so what I mean by that is you can you can navigate in the solution and find your table and add your component, or you can go to the tables menu in the maker portal and find your table there and work with it there. So this is talking about that second option. And if you create a component outside of that solution context, and this option is selected, this include all objects, that object is automatically going to be added to the solution. So there's a couple of times that this may be desirable. If you have a very small application and you only have one solution that's going to be responsible for the configuration of that table, then you may want to use something like that to make sure that no matter where a component is added, it gets added into your solution. And the second one would be if you are building a solution that contains components on top of which other applications or other configuration will be built. So if in the case where you have a core solution with some core configuration, and then that's distributed to other teams to build on top of, if you're responsible for the core, then it might be a good idea, again, when you're creating that base solution to have that configuration selected. So next, I want to talk about the concept of the preferred solution. So this is a solution to which customizations created directly in the environment are added. So we've talked about creating and working within the context of a solution. What this one does is if you are working outside of the context of a solution, any configuration that you make in that environment is going to be automatically be added to this preferred solution. So this is kind of a catch-all for an environment. When you create an environment, there's an out-of-box default solution created called the Common Data Services Default Solution. And that solution also has a publisher, as we've talked about, and the publisher is the default solution, the default publisher for that environment. So to avoid having components created in an environment under the default publisher, it is best to create your own default solution with your preferred publisher so that any components added outside of your solutions will automatically be added to your publisher. So before I move on into the unmanaged and managed layers, are there any questions out there?
Matt, I have one.
Sure.
So I've seen debate about this a little bit. What's your thought around, I'm saying thought, not necessarily recommendation, maybe it's recommendation, around when you get to, it's kind of about solutions, but almost more about back to publishers, having a publisher for your company. Many of the people that attend this are usually consultants. So is your suggestion that if you're doing work for a client, you should have a publisher that's unique to your name? Or do you typically recommend that they just use the publishers that the organization already has, or is there a recommendation around that?
So when it comes to the way that I've always operated is that when I go into a client environment, being a consultant as well, when I go into a client environment, there is usually whatever I'm building is strictly for them. So they may have different applications that we're working on, but generally within one, like in my case, government organization, they usually have one publisher for that organization. The reason being, and I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but it comes really handy when you get into the segmentation part. If you need to transfer the owner, transfer a component from one solution to another, having them under the same publisher makes life a lot easier. So you're
That's kind of what I was saying, because I've seen people say, well, we should have if I'm coming in and the organization's existing and I want to do some work, but we want to kind of compartmentalize that work to just the stuff that we did. So any fields we created and so on, we're going to use our own little publisher versus the organization. But I've seen some challenges, exactly what you're talking about. So you'll probably get into some of that, or maybe not necessarily in this session, but it's an important distinction I think people need to kind of think about. Sometimes I think people are like, oh, I'm just going to spin up a new publisher, but you should probably think about that because there's some potential implications to doing that.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And maybe not at the beginning when you're in development and the world is bright and cheery, then, it's not so bad. But as applications get more mature, having that flexibility baked in at the beginning, absolutely. You're hit the nail on the head.
Cool. Thanks.
All right, no problem. All right. Okay, so having said that, let us dive into the solution framework, the unmanaged and managed solutions. So as my green friend here, solutions are like onions. They have layers. What the heck am I talking about when I say that? So when we talk about solution framework, let's start by defining unmanaged and managed solutions. So your unmanaged solutions are more open. They allow for changes. They'll typically use in environments where changes need to occur, such as your development and prototyping environments. They are the default solution type when creating new solutions as well. So you can't actually just create a managed solution. Every solution starts off as an unmanaged solution. So your key characteristics are that components can be added and removed from an unmanaged solution. Your components can be edited within an unmanaged solution. And when you delete when unmanaged solutions are deleted, their components remain in the environment. And if that's confusing at all, again, we've got some great visuals coming up to help better understand that. So your components in an unmanaged solution live in the unmanaged layer. So the behavior is a little interesting here. When you change a component that lives in the unmanaged layer, that change is applied to every solution in which that component lives. So it is possible to have the same component in multiple solutions, and if you change it in one, if you change an unmanaged component in one, it changes it for all of them. If an unmanaged solution is deleted, the table data for those tables will remain within that environment because deleting the solution itself doesn't actually delete the table, so your data is maintained. And then unmanaged solutions can either be exported as managed or unmanaged. Your managed solutions are a lot more locked down. These are intended for environments where changes should be strictly controlled, such as your QA, UAT, and production environments. So in these solutions, components cannot be added or removed. When a managed solution is imported, its components, and so whereas in the unmanaged solutions, they all kind of share a layer, and there's references to those components in the solutions. A managed solution will actually create its own layer with a copy of the configuration of those components, and it is stored isolated from the other managed layers. If a managed solution is deleted, the components contained in that solution are also deleted if they are not referenced in another solution. So those components will continue to live on in the environment so long as they are referenced by a solution. When the last solution that contains that component is deleted, that component is deleted as well. If a table is deleted as part of deleting a managed solution, the table data is deleted as well. Your managed solutions cannot be exported. They can only be imported into an environment. And the managed solutions also allow you to restrict changes to those components via what we call managed properties. So if you've never worked with managed properties before, managed properties allow you to allow the level of customization that can occur on a component once it is imported into an environment in a managed solution. So your managed properties are defined when you are working in your unmanaged solution. So you can say, for example, on a table, you can either disallow customizations for that table altogether, or you can restrict so nobody can create forms, for example, or charts or views. There are many different, there are different managed properties for different component types. But so these are defined in the unmanaged solution when you're doing your development, and they are applied when that solution, that unmanaged solution, is exported as a managed solution and then brought into another environment. Okay, so we've talked a lot. Let's kind of we're going to dive into the layers here and see if we can't make some sense of all this. So what I have on screen here, I've got a diagram that shows the solution layers, the solution architecture for an environment. So within your solutions, you have a managed layer, and then you have your unmanaged layer. In this case, I brought in one managed solution, and for the purposes of this, let's suspend everything we know about Dynamics and Power Platform, and we're going to pretend that the only type of component that you have is a rectangle. And it's not really practical for building apps, but it's very practical for demonstrating layers. So in this case, we have one component type, and then each component has a color attribute. So in this case, my components all have their color attribute set to green. And because this is the only solution within this environment, what the user is going to see, how the app is going to behave, is that each one of these is going to be green. Pretty simple so far. So what happens when I start bringing in other managed solutions? So in this case, I've brought in managed solution number 2. It also has a copy of component 1, but the color attribute has now been set to orange. What we see now is that this has turned orange. So what the app is going to present, what the behavior the user is going to see, is that this is orange. Now, why is that? We've learned 2 things here. First is that the way that Power Platform decides which component configuration to use is literally whichever one is on the top. So when it's evaluating your components, it's going to look for the topmost layer, and if there's configuration for that component, that's what is going to be used for your app behavior. The second thing we learn here is that the layers are created by the import order of the managed solutions. So as you start bringing in more managed solutions, they start creating layers one on top of another kind of indefinitely while you're still bringing in managed solutions. A not so obvious point about this is that once a solution layer is created, it doesn't move. So in one sentence, I've said that the import order has a bearing on where your layers are going to exist in relation to another, but that is only valid the first time you bring a managed solution into an environment. So if I were to make changes to my first solution here and re-import it, it's not going to get shuffled up to the top. It stays here. So this kind of carries on, like I said, as long as you're bringing in managed solutions, they are going to keep creating layers. The system is going to keep evaluating which most recent layer or which top layer has configuration for that component, and it's going to keep changing your app based on that. So the managed layers they're strict, they're orderly, they're very predictable and reliable. The unmanaged layer is a little bit more wild, wild west. So in this diagram, I have an unmanaged solution. And in this unmanaged solution, I also have copies of those components that exist in the managed layer. So there's a key difference here in how the solution behavior works between unmanaged and managed. In the managed layer, we have these nice, orderly, neat individual layers with copies of the components. When you bring in an unmanaged solution to an environment, the system just kind of dumps the component configuration into the unmanaged layer. Now you're still going to see that there is an unmanaged solution for those that contains those components, but instead of where there's a level of ownership over the components like here, in the unmanaged solutions, there's just a reference, so a pointer. So this solution is saying I've got a pointer to component 1 and component 3. Second thing you're going to notice here is that the unmanaged layer is always on top of the managed layer. So that means that any changes that happen to components in the unmanaged layer will override what is in the managed layers. This is always the first place that I come looking when the solution is not behaving how I expect. It's oftentimes a well-intentioned but ill-advised developer that's gone and tried to change something to get a quick fix, but and then you move on and somebody's forgotten about it, but that configuration is still kind of lurking in the background. So again, as these are the top components, we now see that our app presentation has changed again. We've got purple for component 1 and 3. Now, what happens then if I try to bring in another unmanaged solution? So I've got another solution and I've changed the configuration of one of these components. So unlike what happens down here, when I bring this solution in, a couple things are going to happen that you see. Number one is that the configuration for this component now overwrites what used to be there because it just dumps that configuration into the unmanaged layer. And because this is just a reference to what is in the unmanaged layer, if I were to go into the solution, I would see the same configuration that was just brought in here. And of course, because this is at the top and has changed, our app presentation has changed as well. So when it comes to deleting solutions, I know we kind of talked about this already, but if you're anything like me, I'm a visual learner, and I find that diagrams really do help to drive home these points. So if I were to delete both of my unmanaged solutions, again, because they are only referencing the components in the unmanaged layer, those configurations remain. Whereas down here, if I were to delete a managed solution, oh, I'm getting ahead of myself, sorry. So let's say that you've done this, you've deleted an unmanaged solution and there's still configuration in here. And your user is saying, well, I want my, this is the wrong color. It's supposed to be what's in, down in this previous deployment. How do I get rid of that? So Power Platform does make it very easy to see the layers of your components. So when you're navigating in a solution, you can use the advanced properties of a component, and you can actually view, and I'm gonna actually go in and show how that works as well. But you can find your component, view the layers, and then you can, once you determine that there is unmanaged configuration there's a button that says remove active customizations. If you click that, it will remove that component from the unmanaged layer and then return your component to its managed configuration. And then same thing for deleting managed solutions. If you delete a managed solution, the layer and its components are removed. So if I were to remove that, this component still exists in another layer, so it doesn't get deleted from the system, and then the configuration returns to what is in that first layer because this is now at the top. So to summarize, when should you use each solution type? Now, there's always debate on this one, but the general rule that I follow and what I've done in most of my implementations is your unmanaged solutions are for development environments, anywhere where you actually need to configure your changes, and managed solutions are used anywhere else. So with that in mind, let's take a pause. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment while I set up my other screen. And while I'm setting that up, are there any questions about the managed layers or unmanaged layers?
I don't see any. I have a comment, just that visual, and I've cheated because I've seen part of this before, but that visual is super helpful. Just the way you frame it, it makes it so much easier, because I know it can get really confusing when you start to talk about it in real life terms, and so to break it down the way you did, wildly helpful. So Good job.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
I was
Appreciate
just
that.
going to jump in and say that too, Malcolm, just to see it in the pictures rather than just some words and some text really helped to understand all of that. So thank you, Matt.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure. All right, so I'm in an environment here where, what we're taking a look is at the solution layers in action. So I have in this, so you're going to see this pausing clause. This is the fictitious animal rescue that I'm using to build my fake app for this presentation. So I've got a core solution that has some core configuration in here, and then I am then building on top of this another module. So I've got one solution here. This is managed, and contained within here, I have a table called rescue. And then I have also got an unmanaged solution. So this is for my new adoptions module to get those animals their homes that they so desperately need. And in here, I am planning on maybe, I don't know, adding a new form to the rescue table. So I have now added that to my unmanaged solution. So what I'm talking about when so I'm going to make, let's go in here, I'm going to make a quick change. So because I haven't used any managed properties on this table, I am free to make changes to it in my unmanaged solution. So I'm just going to add description. Very descriptive. And that saves what I was talking about with being able to see the solution layers. If this didn't have, I think the snow is interfering with my internet. That's okay. Usually it doesn't take this long to, there we go. So I've now added a description to this. I can see that here. And when I'm talking about being able to view the layers and see the configuration in each is if I come up to advanced. So this advanced, I mean, you can see it here when I'm in the table, but other components as well. If I don't know if I have any, right, I can come here and say if I have a form selected, I can see that I got this option to see solution layers. So at the table level, because that's where I made my change, if I come in here and I say see solution layers, I'm going to see that my first layer, so the first place that this was brought in was in my core solution, and then I can also see now that I've got changes. Something has changed in the unmanaged layer in this environment. By clicking onto this, you can actually take a look under the hood at what has changed. And in this case, you can see that I've added a description and that the modified date here changed. So I will, the big asterisk on this is that the updated tab is not always this helpful. Sometimes, especially in the case of when you change a form, the entire form form XML gets dumped into this updated. So it's not always this easy, but every now and then you get lucky and you can actually see at this level what has changed in here. So if this was the case where I didn't want this configuration anymore, if it was interfering with the behavior of my application, I could come in here and I can say remove active customizations. Then it's going to give me a warning saying that this is going to revert back to the managed state, which is just fine by me. And once that's done, you're going to see that this layer is going to disappear in the solution layer. So that is now gone. And if I go back to my rescue, my description has also disappeared. So that's just a quick little demonstration on the solution layers there. So let me switch back to the presentation. Okay. So with all that out of the way, let's dive into the concept of solution segmentation. So this is the practice of including only the components that you need within a solution. As you've seen in the, as you've seen in the unmanaged and managed diagrams, having components strewn about in multiple solutions and layers can make it difficult to maintain the configuration for your application. And this is especially true when you have environments where you do have multiple applications running using shared resources, such as your tables. I mean, this is a common use case and one of the great draws of what makes Power Platform and Dynamics so good. So how can we ensure that the components that we need to share between multiple apps remain consistent? So this, I did this diagram up when I was working on, it was a large case management solution for a government department. And the way that it worked is that they had an external app that was the intake for those cases. And then through a service bus, those got put into tables within Power Platform for distribution to for them to work on and fulfill the cases from there. So one of the unique things about this one was that they had cases coming in for multiple lines of business. So there was a core set of tables that needed to be consistent for the for the cases coming in from that external system. And then we've also got, once those are in, different lines of business are going to be consuming that data in a different fashion. So in some cases, they wanted their own model-driven apps. In some cases, they wanted to be able to create their own views and forms for those base tables. But we needed a way to lock down the core configuration so that A, the integration with the outside system didn't break, and B, if I was making changes in one of my developer environments for a line of business, that I'm not going to affect the other. So this is where the guardrails of managed solutions and this like the whole solution framework really come into play. So to start off the configuration, you've got your base solution. So this is your core configuration that you're going to work on in an unmanaged solution. And then once that is ready to go, once you're ready to distribute that to other teams to start building on top of, I've got Azure DevOps as in this one as my ALM platform, but this could be Power Apps pipelines, it could be manual import. It doesn't really matter. It's just this is the mechanism that's getting your solution from one environment to another. So I'm going to export this as a managed solution, and then I'm going to import that into each of my line of business development environments. And then, as a line of business developer, if I'm starting to create my own app and forms and stuff, I'm going to start a new solution on top of that base solution. So using managed properties in the base solution, I can make sure that nobody's touching the columns and forms that I want remaining in there, but allowing them the flexibility to then start referencing those, building on top of those tables, and then referencing them in other tables if you need to, and so on and so forth. So Power Platform really does give you the tools to be able to create a core set of configuration, distribute it to other teams, and then have those other teams be able to consume that. Did I have anything else here? Okay, so the obvious thing that you see here, though, is that each of these solutions requires its own environment. And depending on the size of your organization, that might not be possible, because there are some smaller organizations out there. You maybe not don't have the database space that some of the bigger ones do. And depending on how much data you've got in other environments, this might not be possible. So if that is the case, unfortunately, this kind of scenario isn't going to work. And in absence of something like this, what it's going to boil down to is crystal clear communication between your development teams and trust in your developers that what is in that core solution is going to remain untouched. So before I move on, so I did say earlier that I'd come back to publishers and solution segmentation. So as you'll recall, the publisher exerts a level of ownership over the components with its associated solution. And it is possible to transfer ownership of a component from one solution to another, provided that they have the same publisher. It is not possible to do so with different publishers. So one of the cases that we saw in a previous project was that somebody in this line of business had developed a piece of functionality, and somebody over here said, "Hey, that's really cool. Can we have access to that as well?" And we would had to transfer that component from unmanaged solution in here to I just saw your comment, Malcolm. Trust the developers. We're not trustworthy. Yeah, so you can transfer that component from your unmanaged solution in one of these line of businesses to the base solution, but only if each of these shares a publisher. So that, I hope, helps to drive that point home. Any questions on segmentation or publishers and segmentation? We're nearing the end here. All right, hearing nothing, we will move on. So as I mentioned previously, when I first did this presentation, it was I was doing a bit on the solution packager tool, which I guess is old news now because so I think it was October or November, this connect to Git button started showing up in our environments, and I've been playing around with this recently and actually quite impressed with what I have seen on that. So I figured I'd swap out the old technology for something new in this, and so we're going to walk through how to connect Git to Power Platform. So this is still a preview feature, but you can now add either individual solutions or all of the solutions in your environment to source control in Azure DevOps. And it is specifically in Azure DevOps. Unfortunately, other repo types do not appear to be supported at this time. So if you're using GitHub or GitLab or Jira or whatever other source control, unfortunately, that is not available for us right now. So what happens is, when this is set up and you do a commit from Power Platform to your source control, the solutions are added to source control in an unpacked state. So what that means is that it's not just their zip file that's going into your Git repository. There's a process that runs in the background that breaks your solution up into multiple different components, so actually down to the attribute level. When you're talking about tables, a file will be created for that attribute with all of the properties of that, and then that is added to source control. So the clear benefit of this is that you can introduce visibility into the history of your solution. So I don't know if you're anything like me, but every now and then you go, when the heck did that change, and what happened there? So this gives you the ability to find out, again, at an attribute level, what down to the attribute level, what has changed within your solution. So when you commit, when you do push to your Git repository from Power Platform, the changes are shown as committed by the user logged into the Power Platform Maker portal. So a couple of limitations. So if any of you are software developers by trade and you're used to working with Git, you will notice immediately that there is no ability to undo changes from the source control window. So like if you're working on your desktop and you've got uncommitted changes or stage changes and you decide that you want to get rid of them all, you can just delete those and it will revert back to the most recent configuration in your branch. That unfortunately does not appear to be something that's happening right now in the Git integration. I hope it's something that they introduce soon, because it would be really nice to be able to go and prototype something, and if it doesn't work, just go back and undo all those changes since the last time you committed. But well, I live in dreamland sometimes, so. And then once turned on, it cannot be turned off for a solution. So having said all that, I'm going to do a little switcheroo here, and we're going to look at what that looks like in our environment. So give me just a second. Excellent. And I'm going to share. There we go. Okay, so I've already gone ahead and connected this one of my solutions in this environment to Git. So the process for doing so, if you've never set it up and you just say not connected to Git here, you can come up here, and then the first time that you come in here, you're going to be asked if you want to do a connection for your environment or at the solution level. So the environment, if you pick that, it will take all of those unmanaged solutions in the environment and add them to the same folder in your source control repo. If you pick solution, it's going to give you the flexibility to move those files around within your repository. Regardless of which option that you take, you do have to provide the organization, the project, and the repository in Azure DevOps for where you want this information to go. So like I said, I've already gone ahead and done this with this solution. So what we're going to do right now is I'm just going to, let's do a couple of things. I'm going to add, let's add a column here. And I'm just going to be very descriptive and call it test, and then I'm going to change the label of another column just so I have one create and one update. Nope, that's the wrong. And let's say I want this. Sure, we'll call this requested. Okay, so I've now made a couple of changes to my solution. This is done saving. I'm going to go into the source control window eventually. there's any questions while we're waiting, I'm happy to oblige. Okay, so now I can see I'm in my source control. So this is something that's new that comes up when you've enabled source control. And what I can see here is a list of all the changes that have happened in my solution since the last time I committed. So in this case, there was an update to the solution itself. I can see that I created this new attribute called test. I can see that I updated my rescue. So that one was the one that I had updated the label for. And apparently there was a change to the ribbon. So if I want to push this to source control, there's this commit button up here. But before I do that, one of the other really cool features about this, and something that I know some project teams have complained about for a while, is that if you are using Azure DevOps as your for your story tracking for all your requirements, you can from here tag a work item. So if I come in and let's go to my board, and I think, oh, there we go. So I've created a user story here. So this is number 16. The convention is that you just go $16 and then add a comment, and I'm going to commit this. And then once this is in, we're going to go take a look at what that looks like on the other side. Okay, so that's been committed. So once that's done, I have a link here that will bring me to the commit, so I can take a look at everything that has changed for this in my solution for this commit. So I can say that in this rescue ID attribute, I can see there's my label change. I can see that this was all added, and so on and so forth. The really nice thing about that is by tagging the, oh, I'm in the wrong area. If I go back to my work item, I can now see that these are the changes that I did to help fulfill this story. And so right from within here, I can easily come and see what changes I made for that story. For those that may not be familiar with Git too, the way that you would come in and see the history. So I created this folder here, and this is so this folder relates to my solution. And so in each of these, so I can drill down. So for this table, it still says entities. I find that funny. It's updated to tables a while ago, but some things are harder to change, I guess. But I can come in here and look at, so for each attribute in here, I've got a file. And if I go to this file, I can come and see the current configuration. So here's all the properties that I have for this attribute, my display names. And then in addition to that, I can come and look at the history. I can see that this was just created in this solution. And if there is I think I have history visible on another one. Let me go back to my files. I think it was the core and the rescue table. I think it was my information form. And then my form. So if I come in here, I look, I can see that there was a change to this one. And so it gives you the time that it's been changed. And then if I were to click onto here, I can see a side-by-side comparison. So I can scroll down here and see that at this point, a French description was added for that property. So that is Git integration in a nutshell. Let me switch back to the presentation. Give me just one moment. And there we go. So, all right, we are nearing the end here. Okay, so options for exporting and moving solutions. So these are the three most common. There's always a million ways to do something, but generally speaking, these are the options that you have available to you. There is the manual export and import. So this is very functional. It's very, sometimes it's a very basic way of doing it, but you can go and export your solution from one environment and then log into the other one and bring that in manually. So it is functional. It might be okay for smaller projects or smaller teams, but I would be remiss if I didn't highlight that there is a bit of a risk with that, in that if the source environment, especially if you're bringing that solution into another environment as a managed solution, if a perfect storm happened and somehow your source environment got deleted, so some overzealous admin was going and cleaning up things that hadn't been used in a while, and no copies of that solution were kept, it would be impossible then to edit that solution again, because all you would have is the managed solution. The second one would be Power Apps pipelines. So this is the new out-of-box functionality for deploying. It's grown quite a bit since they were first introduced, and we just started using them on one of our smaller projects too. It's been pretty happy with the results. Some things to know with that is that you must deploy to a managed environment when using pipelines, and that the functionality of pipelines is limited to the solution deployments themselves. So for example, you would not be able to do something like move your data. And then the last one, and still my preferred one, just because of the features that are available, is your Azure DevOps pipeline. So Azure DevOps, as far as build and deploy, is it's a bit of a sledgehammer to kill a mosquito. There's so much in that in those pipelines that's available, but it does give you the tools to, like, if you wanted to go so far as to like being able to create environments. Or move your data, there are options within there to be able to do that. The downside of which is that there is a bit of a technical skill set required for that. And that, my friends, is the end. So I will open the floor to any questions.
Matt, do you have, I have a quick question just around the technical skill set required. Do you have thoughts, like where's the best place for somebody to go if people are toying with it? Because this comes up at like every conference, especially in the last little while. I've noticed a lot of people are starting to move in this direction. So for those who are, I'll use the citizen developer term, so
Right.
I don't have that technical background, where's the best place for someone to go and get resources to learn how to do some of this stuff? Just to learn
Would it be a
documentation.
cop-out if I said YouTube?
No, not at all.
I mean, that's where I learned everything. That's where I learned to fix my car. That's where I learned.
Fair enough. Are there any specific people that you think have really good content that would help people?
I'm trying to think. So I've been working in DevOps for a few years, and there was a guy that I worked with when I was at National Research Council, who taught me everything I know about it, and I've just been kind of keeping up on there. So unfortunately, I don't. You know what? I'm gonna look for somebody though, and
No, that's totally
yeah.
fine. And if you want to start a YouTube channel, we'll all subscribe. So there's that. That was awesome. That was a great overview. Like I said, I cheated. I saw this presentation in part before, so I knew it was going to be a good one for people to see. So thank you for bringing it here.
Leonard, I
Really-
see a hand up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had one question. We use Click Dimensions, which marketing solution, which we install into our CE environment. Inevitably, the business wants to change, lead forms, a bunch of the forms that come natively or, are overwritten by Click Dimensions. And it makes upgrading a bit of a mismatch, because we're sitting with what is their ideal solution. Stuff are working. It's, their JavaScript is looking for certain fields on the forms, all of that. And then, we've got our unmanaged, solution on top of that, where we've removed certain field, added some more custom stuff on there. Like, what is the ideal situation, or how would you tackle those changes over and above like a third-party vendor's solution?
That is a great question. Let me think about that for a second. Like I don't have a whole lot of experience working with some of the third-party vendor ones. Most of the projects that I've worked on, we've kind of done our own. But I mean, the theory of it is this: like if the Click Dimensions managed solution has allowed changes to their components so they don't have managed properties. I think what you've described there about having an unmanaged solution on top of that and starting to make those changes to those components is about the best way that you can go. The only thing that I would add to that is that when you were moving, so I imagine you'd have a development environment for that. If you're moving past that, that would just be in a managed solution to make sure that you're going to be able to prevent the changes to the things that you've created and maybe customized on top. Does that help to answer your question?
Yes.
Excellent. All right, another hand?
Yeah, Yamana?
Yeah, hi. First of all, thanks, Matt, for the great presentation. I really enjoyed it. Just to point out that we do follow the same approach at the at my workplace, the federal government department that I work with. And by the way, I work with NRC. So,
Oh,
yeah.
tell Carrie I say hi.
Yeah, well, she pinged me late last night to join your presentation, and I'm
Oh,
glad I did.
wonderful. Small world.
So yeah, exactly. So we pretty much, like I said, follow the same approach. I came on board and I put together all of this ALM strategy for the team. However, and we've been doing it for a couple years now, 3 years, but we're still struggling with patches. So I would like to know, what are your thoughts on patches now that we have a formal ALM process in place? So for us, we
yeah,
still do the unmanaged patches,
right.
and that leaves us with a lot of residual, you know what I mean, unmanaged layers up until the next proper deployment is ready to go out.
Right. So that is an excellent question, and something that I've certainly seen even on my current projects where there have been patches introduced in previous deployments, and we're now kind of living with the consequences of doing that. The first thing I would say that although it's not practical, as much as possible, try to do your full solution deployment so you can avoid patches in the first place. I know that there is the clone a patch functionality and we've used it with varying degrees of success. Yeah, I think it really boils down to kind of what your risk tolerance is. I mean, I've seen both. I've seen both happen in each, with having an unmanaged patch, or even deploying solutions as a managed patch, which has caused issues as well. I think it's, especially if you have a software development background, like it's so hard to go to leave that behind, where it used to be so easy to create a branch and do your changes and do that. So I don't know if that answers your question. I think if it helps to make you feel better, you're not alone.
I was hoping for a clear-cut answer, but I do understand that out there people are still struggling when it comes to patches, and the idea of using the out-of-the-box clone or Microsoft patching or CRM patching mechanism has been circulating around the team for a while now, but we haven't had the courage because we don't know. It's a bit finicky, if I may say, because first of all, it locks up the dev solution from developers having access to it while we're preparing the patch. And then what happens when we apply the patch? Let's say if we want to make an update, a patch to the patch. So this is something that we struggled with the other day. So I guess we've never been brave enough to put it to test yet. So I was just hoping that somebody out there have tried this approach and have some kind of thoughts about it.
Fair enough. I don't know if there's anybody else in the room that might have a better answer to that. We're all suffering together. That's
I guess we'll have to suffer for a little while too. Yeah. Thank you so much.
I don't hear or see any other questions, this commentary, but with that said, I mean, Matt, we very much appreciate you taking time to join us today and present all of that. And thank you for modifying when we talked about this. Matt had done this presentation at the regional event in November. Was it in November that we did that? And so I appreciate very much that you even modified and updated. And as we all know, the world changes so bloody fast that things are always in motion. And so I appreciate that you took time to kind of update and add in some new content to bring it up to speed with where we are all of 3-4 months ago, right, or later. So appreciate it so much.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Pleasure's all on this side of the camera.
Awesome. Good to see everybody. Thanks for joining. We are back next month with Nancy Calder is going to hone in on contact center. So hopefully you're there. And as I mentioned at the top, and Diane showed the slide, if you're interested in presenting, we would love to have content. I already snagged somebody out of this chat who made one little comment, and now she's probably never going to comment again because I latched onto it right away, and I was like, we want that. So, but jokes aside, no pressure on anybody. But if you have interest in presenting, we would love to hear from you, because the entire premise here is learning from each other. And Matt, to your point, we're all suffering together. So why don't we learn a bit together while we go through that suffering? So appreciate everybody's time. Hope you have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Matt. Great presentation.
Thanks, everybody. It was nice to meet you all. We'll see you soon.